Now, if I look at this Y itself is a basket. And inside are the members of Y. And each one of these members is itself a basket, and it has other things. So where does it all start? And it starts with the empty set. The empty set is where it all begins. Okay. So when things start with the empty set, and then they are built up gradually, this is the, I hope all you students can type LaTeX, and so I'll use LaTeX symbols time to time, and you will read them. And it looks like this, like a zero with a slash through it. I have seen various undergraduate students call it phi. It has nothing to do with phi. Please don't call it phi. Call it empty set. Pi is a Greek alphabet, which is like F in the Latin alphabet, and it has nothing to do with the empty set. The LaTeX notation for phi is something backslash phi. Okay, it has nothing to do with backslash empty set. Now the reason that slash is put is, well, when people first made not first made, in modern mathematics, natural numbers is the set 0, 1, 2, 3, blah, 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 blah. And what are these things? Everything is a set. So I should tell you what set is 0. 0 is the empty set. 1 is the set whose only member is 0. And 2 is the set whose members are 0 and 1. You get the idea. Yeah. And so on. You can fill it in. So things at this level are usually taught to undergraduates. And I have a nice suggestion for you. Again, it's a very old book. It's called Helmholtz Naive Set Theory. Here the word naive means non-axiomatic. It's almost consistent with modern usage, not completely consistent, but still very, very useful. So do have a look at Helmholtz naive set theory if you have not been exposed to set theory, the way I'm talking about, meaning where sets are themselves made of sets, which are themselves made of sets, and finally that's made of empty set. Every mathematical object is a set, like natural numbers are sets like this. Real numbers are Dedekind cuts of rational numbers, or equivalence class, set of equivalence classes of Cauchy sequences of rational numbers. Rational number itself is a certain equivalence class of pairs of integers. Integers are pairs of natural numbers. Natural numbers are defined in terms of set. So these ordered pairs is what I have to say. So let me say what are ordered pairs. So if X is a set, everything that we write is a set. X is a set, Y is a set. We have to make a new set XY. On the other hand, everybody knows there is a set XY whose existence is guaranteed by one of the actions. This is a set whose only members are X and Y. Now I want to, but in this, there's nothing like first fellow is X and the second one is Y. You want to make an ordered pair. This is ordered. You should be able to tell which is in the first place and which is in the second place. So how to make such a thing? And so you invent some recipe and fix it. So the convention for this, and there can of course be other conventions, is define this to be equal to the set whose members are set X and set XY. And with this, my exercise to you is prove the following: X, Y equal to ZW if and only if X equal to Z and Y equal to W. So this does the job of ordered pair. Okay. So this is exercise for your tutorial session. Yeah, somebody wants to ask something?
Probably there was a typo in the previous. So you just wrote
What?
y equal to z. It should be, I guess, w. Yeah.
Where? Oh, this one. Yes,
In
of
the
course.
last
Thank
one.
you. Yes. Thank you for pointing out. And second fellow here was W. You are right. Let me correct it. So y equal to w. Right. Good. So you are paying attention, and everybody has to pay attention and correct the typos. Yeah. And even if it's a tiny, small typo, please point it out. Don't think that it's too silly to point out, because that reassures me that you are paying attention. Okay. So there are a few things about sets that I need to still explain, because even Simmons and Helmholtz together don't explain these things. I think a good source for learning basics of set theory the way I would like, I won't have so many reservations about what's in it, is a book only 25 years old, or only 25-year-old edition of a 50-year-old book, and that's Serge-Lang's Algebra. The latest edition, whatever it is called, third edition, it is roughly in 1990s. Pretty old, but I don't think most of the important things have not changed in these matters after 1990. Okay. So coming to the most important thing, or some of the important things about sets which are not explained there, is that what is a function, or what is a map? So X is a set, and Y is a set, and F is a map. So what is F? So this is also a set, right? So F is a set. F has to be a set, but what kind of set? Everything in that we will talk about is a set, as I said, with only slight exaggeration. So this set F is actually a triple. There is X, there is Y, and there is a certain subset of X cross Y. This X cross Y is the set of all ordered pairs. So that X belongs to X and Y belongs to Y. And we already defined ordered pairs. So now you have this stuff. The axioms of set theory tell you that, yeah, they all form a set, etc. They are pretty constant. And this is not any arbitrary subset, but this subset has the property, they should have the property that for all X belonging to X, there exists a unique Y belonging to Y such that X, Y belongs to gamma. Yeah, this symbol in unique. So this means there exists unique. Okay, so this is a phrase we'll have to go on saying again and again. So there's a simple short form for it. Yeah, everybody agrees this is the definition of function. So by definition, the function has a codomain. See, you may wonder, what if I suppress, what if I only keep gamma? Won't I get the function? Because in the old days, I remember when I was in college, a function was simply this, gamma. There was no X and Y, because the argument was, well, these are ordered pairs, so look at all the first elements, and the set of all those is X. But there was no way of recovering Y from the graph, because you see, the function may not be onto. For example, Y may be a very large set, but this function may be constant. For every X, it may be the same Y. Then you don't recover Y from its graph. If I take the constant function taking value 1 on rational numbers, and I say this is a function from rational numbers to real numbers, looking at the graph, you cannot recover real numbers. You only get the value 1. Yeah. So you understand why the modern definition has 3 things in it, and they have names. This is the domain. This is the codomain. O-D-O-M-A-I-N. And this is the graph. So function has 3 things: domain, codomain, and graph. Everybody understood? I am not going to explain how to compose functions and all such things, you know already. Yeah, so let's get to the universal property of this binary product. So you see, when I have x cross y, it comes with a certain map. We'll call projection on x. We can also call it the first projection that goes from x cross y to x. There's a second projection P2 or Py, whatever you put it. Will may not be consistent in notation, that goes from x cross y to y. And the universal property is this. So I have x cross y, I have this projection to x, I have the projection to y. This is P1, this is P2. Now the properties given any other set W and one map here F and one map here, let's call it G. Then there exists a unique map H which makes this triangle commute as well as this triangle commute. Where will it send some small w, this map? This symbol where it's an arrow and a horizontal line means it's sending this member of this to whatever it is sending. So where should it go? Yeah, somebody tell me the formula here. It has to be an ordered pair, right? So wherever it goes under the first projection, it goes as F goes. So the first member has to be of this ordered pair is FW. And the Ex, this will go to FW. This is what it is going under F. And same thing on the other side, okay? And now you see these triangles commute. Words like this triangle commute, etc., you know well. Am I right? Somebody contradict me. No, so you know well. So it usually refers to when you have more than one way of following the arrows. And this triangle commutes means follow it like this or follow it like this, and the composite will be the same. Now comes, well, so lot of time we are saying equal to. This is F, this is G, this is phi, this is phi, which looks different when we say. So we say G composite F is equal to phi. What is this equal to business? That's not an object in mathematics. This equal to is part of grammar. It is making a sentence. In mathematical sentences, there are mathematical objects. This is a mathematical object. They play the role of nouns. And then there's equal to and member of. They play the role of verbs. So what is the meaning of this verb dot 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 is equal to dot dot dot? So tell me, you must have read in your civics lesson that all men are equal. Okay, all men are equal. So what's the cardinality of the set of all men?
1.
1. And therefore, that is not what is meant when they tell you that all men are equal, right? So equal is used in some very different way in sociology, philosophy, etc., etc., etc. But in mathematics, equal to is used just in the sense of being identical. X equal to Y means the thing whose name is X and the thing whose name is Y are one and the same thing. This is the meaning of X equal to Y. There are no multiple objects there. Identity, equality is identity. Yeah. So mathematician will say that the political rights of any man X are equal to the political rights of any man Y. Instead of saying all men are equal. Or whatever that other thing may be where equality is referring to. Maybe it may be the moral worth of man X equals the moral worth of man Y for all XY, etc., etc. But in mathematics, when we say equal to, we really mean identical, nothing else. Yeah. Okay. So what else I want to tell you about sets? I want to tell you about products. So this is the property of product. There exists a unique such. Therefore, if somebody makes some other candidate for product, here's my candidate for product. I'm going to invent a new product for X and Y. It is the set of such matrices, X and Y. X belongs to X, Y belongs to Y. Now I'm going to define a map from here to X and here to Y. And this is the projection I'll call on the top entry. This I'll say the bottom entry. Okay. So you see where it sends XY. XY is going to X and is going to Y. This also has that fantastic property that given any W and given any two maps F and G, there exists a unique map here. K, which makes these things commute. And how will you define K? K of W you will put to be equal to FW and GW. So I have made one product. There is another product you have traditionally seen, which is the set of ordered pairs like this. While I have made my product using matrices, somebody else will repeat X 15 times and Y 13 times in a big matrix. We'll fix his convention. I don't know. Yeah, so there are many ways of making this product, but the map has to exist and has to be unique. In particular, W may be some other candidate for the product. W may be this one. W may be that other product, and F and G may be Px and Py. Then there exists a unique such map from W to W. Similarly, there exists a unique map from P to W. And if I compose these maps, that has to be the unique map from P to P and W to W. But P to P, there is only identity map which fulfills all this. W to W identity. Therefore, the conclusion of all this is this triple X cross Y, Px, Py is unique up to a unique isomorphism it's not physically unique. You see, this is a very important concept. This is what I want to teach you in this lecture. This is the concept which is not there in Simmons, not there in older textbooks. This concept was newly invented in 1950s and 60s, and so now it is entering all your education, 50 years, 60 years, 70 year gap. Okay. So you understood the meaning of unique up to unique isomorphism. This is not physically unique. The other extreme one may say is physically unique. This is much stronger. Physically unique is much stronger in some sense. In some sense, it's also not that strong. But this is unique up to unique isomorphism. This means anybody who has another yeah, somebody asking
चेंज का ऑप्शन आ रहा होगा शफल का
क्या होगा hello G, somebody saying something? Okay, so this is unique up to a unique isomorphism. Let me tell you, empty set is actually unique because you can talk of a set. There may be a set X which has the property that for all Y, negation of Y is a member of X. Nothing is a member of X. Then you will say that such a thing is the empty set phi, not phi, empty set. I also have this habit from undergraduate days of time to time calling it phi. So this X is empty set. Is there any other empty set? No, there's only one empty set. How about singleton set? Let's talk of singleton set. A singleton set T has this following property. It has two properties. First property is T is not empty. And the second property is if X is a member of T and Y is a member of T, then X equal to Y. Okay. These two properties tell you what is a singleton set. You can make it as the definition of a singleton set. A set T is called a singleton set if and only if it satisfies these two properties. Yeah. How many singleton sets are there? Lots. This is a singleton set. This is also a singleton set. Both of these are singleton sets. The only member of this singleton set is phi. The only member of this singleton set is the set consisting of empty set. Yeah. So this is a singleton set. This is also a singleton set. So there are lots and lots of singleton sets. But given any two singleton sets, there's a unique bijection between them. So singleton set is a singleton set is uniquely unique up to a unique isomorphism. Yeah, you understood the notion of unique up to unique isomorphism? Okay, how about a set of two elements? A set of cardinality 2. And you can define it. First of all, it has to be non-empty. Secondly, it should have members X and Y such that X not equal to Y. And then you can say that given any member W of that set, either W is equal to that X or W is that equal to that. Okay. Then it's a set of cardinality 2. Is it unique up to unique isomorphism? No, because somebody can make a set of cardinality 2, somebody else can make a set of cardinality 2, and there are many bijections between them. How many bijections are there between these two? Yeah, somebody answer to show me. My connection is not broken. There are two bijections between them. One of them sends X to Z and Y to W. The other one sends X to W and Y to Z. If I take a set of cardinality n, well, it has lots of automorphisms. It has factorial n automorphisms. Yeah. So it's neither unique nor is the isomorphism unique. Nothing. Yeah. But product is not physically unique. You can make plenty of candidates for product, but there is only a unique bijection between P and that other fellow, which will make all these diagrams commute. Okay, so I explained to you what is unique up to unique isomorphism. So here is an exercise. Suppose I take completion of a metric space. Exercises will often refer to things which I have not touched in the lecture, but you already know. What kind of uniqueness is there for completion of a metric space? And contrast this with what kind of uniqueness is there for algebraic closure of a field? Okay. Real numbers and algebraic closure, complex numbers. How many kinds of complex numbers can you have? And suppose I make my complex numbers and you make your complex numbers. Are they isomorphic as extensions of R? And how many such isomorphisms are there? And the answer is, okay, here's my real numbers. I make an algebraic closure of it. Okay. You make an algebraic closure of it. So these are algebraic extensions and this is algebraically closed. Then there exist two possible isomorphisms between them. In fact, if I take K over R, then you know K, your standard K is C. Okay, so let me write it as C. That's one possible construction. There are many other constructions. One such construction is to on R2 you define something. But then C to C, there are two such maps. Okay. And one of them is Z goes to Z. And what's the other one?
Z goes to Z conjugate.
Absolutely. There are two of them. So an algebraic closure is not uniquely unique. Completion of a metric space you will find is uniquely unique. It's not physically unique. There could be different constructions. Okay. But it's unique up to a unique isomorphism. Meaning here's a metric space, here's one completion, here somebody else has made another completion, let's call it Y. Then there exists a unique one bijection, which is 1, 1 on 2 metric preserving, such that this triangle commutes. Okay. In this sense, it is unique up to a unique isomorphism. Okay, next set theoretic notion I want to tell you about. Again, those books don't. Not Helmholtz. Helmholtz is fine. But I find many of the textbooks written in 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, are afraid of the empty set. They have this great fear of the empty set. I don't know why. The fear of empty set is related to the European fear of zero. They're also afraid of zero. So NCERT, which exactly copies what there is in America, had removed zero from natural numbers. I remember looking at NCERT textbooks and zero was not there as part of natural numbers. Zero is something unnatural for them. I don't know. On the other hand, they tell us that natural numbers are numbers used for counting. So to the answer, how many? The answer can also be zero. How many mangoes do you have now in your refrigerator? Well, I never bought any or I eaten them all. I have zero. I have 1, I have 2, I have 3. So zero is a natural number. So NCERT had to invent some new word. Of course, NCERT didn't invent. They copied this word from Americans, and that was whole numbers. They told us that these are whole numbers. Then they had some other name and all confusion. Natural numbers are 0, 1, 2, 3. Please remember. So there should be no confusion in case you have studied in NCERT school and have directly come to AFS. There is some scope for confusion about whether when I say natural number, I allow 0 or I don't allow 0. I allow 0. Correspondingly, okay, so what was the model for 0? You see, the model for 0 was empty set because the numbers are given such definitions that they are exactly that desired size. The set 1 has exactly one member, it's a singleton set. And the set 2 has exactly 2 members. So of course, you know what's the definition of n. The definition of n is 0, 1, up to n minus 1. Those ones you have already defined, and next stage you have n, and it has exactly n members. You see, that's why 0 is the empty set, but the context may be different. You don't know, you want somebody to understand 0. Because after all, natural numbers are unique up to unique isomorphism. These are my natural numbers. Suppose somebody else makes another copy of natural numbers. Okay. Somebody's natural numbers may be 0, 1, then 1, 1, then 1, 1, 1, and so on. You get the idea. These are his natural numbers. Then between my natural numbers and his natural numbers, there is a unique bijection which preserves, because natural numbers is not just this set, but it comes with some extra structure called successor, etc., etc. So, and successor and starting element, there are two extra structures given on natural numbers. So to preserve the starting element and to preserve the successor function, There's a unique bijection between any two models of natural numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. 5, 0, it's the same as shunya, ek, don, teen, char, etc. etc. There's a unique bijection between 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, dot, 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 and shunya, ek, don, teen, char, dot, dot, dot. So natural numbers are unique up to unique isomorphism. And so we have to choose one model, and so we have chosen this model for its convenience. Just as we have to choose one model for the product of two spaces, we have to choose one model. So we chose this as convenient. We could have chosen this one, and writing would have been a bit less convenient. Okay. So before I go on to products, arbitrary products, any questions? कोई सवाल है तो पूछो. Before I talk of arbitrary products, I need something for my throat. Half a minute break till I swallow a lozenge. Okay, so is there a question? None? So let's go on. So I want to introduce arbitrary products. So for that, I have to talk of a family. This is the name I applied, say. Which means for each I belonging to I, we are given a set xi. This is all that matters. One can manufacture families in terms of functions, and I'll leave it to you to define the notion of a family in terms of functions. It's a function, it corresponds to a function whose domain is I, and which takes the value xi on I. But the codomain of this function is not important. So you might have plenty of functions which define the same family. So you will have to take an equivalence class of such functions. So for each I, there is a set xi. That's a family of sets. I want to ask you what is meant by this product. And it comes with projections pi. Pi is a projection from this set, this product P. So Pi goes from P into Xi. Yeah, so what is this set? This set is a family of, sometimes you write it like this, sometimes you write it like this. Family of sets itself where xi belongs to xi. Okay. So this, in the case of the indexing set being a set with exactly two elements, will be unique up to unique bijection or earlier definition of product. And what does this pi do? It sends this xi, I belonging to I, maps to xi. What is its universal property? So given any other imposter w, and this has all these pi's going to xi's, and suppose w has a map fi to each xi, then there exists a unique map, and that unique map we can call fi. Its ith component is fi. Going to here says that this triangle commutes. So have you seen this arbitrary product of sets, family of sets? Have this arbitrary family of sets? Yeah? So if you say yes, you have seen it, then here's my question, and that is exercise. Suppose that I is the empty set. So you call it empty family. Do I have to give any xi's? Of course not, because I have to give an xi for every small I here, right? So that already gives me a family, empty family. I don't have to give the extra data xi, because remember, for each I in I have to give you an xi, but I has no small I in it, so I have no further job left. So I have given you the empty family. So my question is, describe the product. So again, tutors, please note this exercise for tutorial. There are certain exercises or certain statements which keep coming up, which I have, with some experience, learned are the difference between undergraduate student and PhD student and MSc student, somewhere in between. So this is one such. If you have some experience of correctly defining things, understanding the definition, then you'll be able to do this. Okay. Next thing I have to do with sets is called disjoint union or co-product. So what do you mean by disjoint union? Because x and y may not be disjoint. If x and y are already disjoint, I may be happy, but they are not already disjoint. And I want to create a disjoint union. I want disjoint union of two copies of natural numbers. So how do I get two copies of something? Can I get multiple copies of something? And you have to again invent an artificial device. The artificial device is not unique. However, the answer will be unique up to unique isomorphism. You see how often I am talking about unique up to unique isomorphism, even in doing simple set theory, because it keeps coming up. This is a very important concept. So to create multiple copies of X, what you have to do is you have to take X product with 1. You can take X product with 2. Now, what's the intersection of X product with 1 and X product with 2? What is the intersection of these two sets? Yeah, equal to empty set. Because every element here looks like this, X, 1. And every element here looks like some X prime and 2. And for an ordered pair to be equal, this X has to be X prime, possible, but 1 can never be 2. So they are disjoint. So if I now take the union of these two, X cross 1 union X cross 2, this I might call as X disjoint union X. So I have my general recipe. I don't have to worry about whether X and Y have common elements, then do something, don't have common elements, then do something. Just give a simple recipe always as X disjoint union Y equal to X cross 1 union Y cross 2. And now there's more structure. Just this much does not make it uniquely unique. There's some more structure. There's the first injection Jx, which goes from X into X disjoint union Y. It sends any small x to X comma 1. There's a second map which goes from Y into, and that sends any Y to, yeah, where should it go? Y comma 2. So both of them go in. And now comes the universal property. The universal property is, and I change the color because I'm going to overwrite. If there is some other set W, and such that X has one map to W, let's call it F, and Y has a map to W, let's call it G, then there exists a unique map H, there exists a unique H which makes both these triangles commute. You agree? If you agree, tell me what to send where. So naturally, to make this commute, if I take an element of the type, in order to define this, if I here the element is either of this type, something something 1.
Hello.
So you are not audible.
Yeah, I guess sir is not audible.
There may be internet problem with Professor Nitsure, so we
Take
have to wait.
simply this.
Ah,
How should I define Ji?
ah,
Ji should send,
I think people missed something, sir. Nitsure, sir.
yeah.
You were not audible for some time. So
I was not.
audible, yeah,
I
and
see.
yeah,
For how much time?
yeah, maybe 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes, I was not ready. What were they doing for 5 minutes? Anyway, so I don't
No,
know.
they were saying, they were saying, but yeah, you couldn't know.
Anyway, so yeah, that's my problem. That's why I keep asking questions, and you guys have to keep on answering. So, have you understood, say, disjoint of two sets?
Yes, sir.
Answer. I want to hear now.
Yeah, up to defining the map from X to W and Y to W, F and G. Yes,
So
up
this
to
this
there.
stage you have followed, right?
Yeah, but
Now let's yeah.
Yes,
Let me
sir.
let me repeat it. So I have two sets X and Y. I want to create something called disjoint union. And so I represent X as X comma 1 and Y as Y comma 2. So I guarantee that they have now become disjoint. Such elements X comma 1 are in one-to-one correspondence with X. I take any small x and I just make a pair with 1 in the second place. And if I have some element from the second set, I put 2 in the second place. Yeah. And just give me a moment. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yes, sir. Yes, can.
Yes, sir.
So there is, so now there, if I simply take union, it remains disjoint because now there will never be any common element. This is a way of making two copies of anything. See, it's like saying like this. I want two copies of real line. What can I do? Well, take the line y equal to 0, that's x-axis. Take the line y equal to 1, that's also x-axis. That's another copy of the real line. Take the line y equal to 2 in R2. That's one more copy. You can create multiple copies of whatever figure you want by adding one more coordinate and changing its value. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, you understood the idea of how to make disjoint unions. So this is what we are doing to an arbitrary family. Now I have a family of sets and I don't know whether they are disjoint or not disjoint, what it is. So I modify the elements. I take an element x of xi and just add this I in the second place. Now all these are disjoint and I simply take their union, it becomes disjoint union. Now I can take each one of these xi's can sit in this disjoint union by, and this is where I was when you told me that you cannot show anymore. Okay, so this x I, yeah, this is where you are going to send x. There's some element in x side that you are going to send to x comma I, which is here. This is how you create a map of each into this. So therefore you have created now C and this whole family of map Ji from Xi to C. This is a family of maps indexed by I belonging to I. This data is unique up to a unique isomorphism, which means if somebody makes another and calls this Ki from Xi into C, okay, for I belonging to I, there's another candidate. Then there exists a unique bijection between this and this, such that this triangle commit, this is not C, but this is a D, it's print here. So this is equal to this, and from here to here it is H, and this should commute. So there exists a unique search H, which takes these injections in that. Because after all, we did arbitrary things. I chose 1 and 2. You could have chosen 1000 and 5 million. And that's another way of making the same disjoint union. What's so holy about 1 and 2 instead of 1000 and 2 billion? Nothing. So between this and this, there is a unique. Okay, you keep the, you have a unique bijection between them, even though physically there are multiple constructions. You understood what's happening? Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So such a thing is also unique up to unique isomorphism. Now my question to you, much easier than the earlier. Suppose I take I to be the empty indexing set. And so there is no question of giving any x's. And now I want to know what is disjoint union over the empty set. Describe this. So we still have 2 minutes. So I want to give you simpler exercises. I'm going to say what is an initial object. Initial set. And I'm going to say what's a final set. So I'll say that X is an initial set if given any set Y, there exists a unique map F from X to Y. And I'll say X is a final set. If given any set Y, there exists a unique map F from Y to X. Then this is the final set. So my question, and now we have 1 minute left scheduled. What is there an initial set? Is there a final set? So exercise, describe what is an initial set. Is it unique? Is it unique up to unique isomorphism? What is the final set? Is it unique? Is it unique up to a unique isomorphism? Yeah. So this is also exercise. And I'll write that word exercise and we'll stop here.